Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, a couple of areas here in yellow signifying advisories, and in both cases, wind advisories. And that's for tonight until 6 a.m. Friday morning for the Upper Koyukuk Valley and the Upper Kobuk Valley. There for both actually south of Ambler for the Kobuk Valley, looking for winds to continue gusting tonight to about 40 miles an hour or 40 to 45 miles an hour. And that's mainly down near Shugnak and the hills south of that area there, and also in the Koyukuk Valley. Again, gusts 40, 45 miles an hour continuing tonight. And that could produce some blowing, drifting snow, probably just drifting snow along areas of the Dalton Highway there. So moving on to the Bering Sea, nothing going on there. No watches, warnings, or advisories here over anywhere in southern Alaska over the next day at least. Here, just the two areas up there, the Kobuk and Koyukuk Valleys. Moving on to satellite imagery, you can see a general east to west flow here. That's due to upper level high pressure that's up along and off the Arctic coast there. And so the flow coming around with warmer air aloft to the north. You actually have colder air to the south here, and that inverts the flow, makes it easterly, not only at the surface, but mostly aloft here, as you can see the clouds streaming along. And kind of a definitely low pressure here at southeast Kodiak Island, but more of a wind producer than precipitation producer. AKwx, for example, picked up about 1/4 of an inch or 2/10 of an inch of precipitation during the 12-hour period today. Otherwise, winds gusting anywhere from 40 to 50 miles an hour, strongest in Shelikof Strait with gusts upwards of 45 to 50 miles an hour there today. And then Kodiak State Airport seeing gusts around 40 miles an hour. And just some kind of loose clouds here along the North Gulf Coast, nothing really organized or too organized, and as a consequence, no significant precipitation occurring. Had, for example, just 0.02 of an inch today at Seward. Otherwise, amounts ranged from a little bit more at Portage and Alyeska, about 0.2 of an inch there, and that's about it. Nothing at Cordova, maybe some sprinkles, and then that trough here, another trough you can see rotating up into the southeast coast. That brought upwards of about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation to Ketchikan. Otherwise, Cake had about 1/10 of an inch. And those there were the heaviest amounts you could find, except down northeast of Ketchikan, Power Station had about 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. As you can see, kind of more enhanced cloudiness down in that area. Gusty winds anywhere from 30 to 40 miles an hour along the north coast there. Under gale force generally. Stronger winds back here with this low along Kodiak Island, as I mentioned. Then a weak trough out here extending west-northwest from the center. Across Bristol Bay, scattered areas of snow showers here or rain and snow showers. Mostly wet snow showers, but nothing too significant here across the Alaska Peninsula areas. But winds pretty gusty at let's see, Nelson Lagoon seeing gusts upwards of 35 miles an hour, and King Cove had a gust about 60 miles an hour today out of the west and northwest there, as some chillier air streaming into that low center, into the circulation out of the Bering Sea. Otherwise, up here in the interior, a little bit of a gradient going on up here with those wind advisories out. Indian Mountain seeing gusts about 52 miles an hour today for a peak wind gust there in Shaktoolik River, which is at about 1,800 feet there, just east of Norton Bay. So sort of puts it in the Nulato Hills there. They had winds gusting to 56 miles an hour out of the east, and also 30, 40 mile an hour winds around Delta Junction today with or actually 45-mile-an-hour winds at Delta Junction for peak wind gusts there. You can see gradient much tighter here. And actually pulling some clouds in on those easterly winds and a few flurries, but nothing significant there, just mostly clouds and a little bit of light precipitation. Otherwise, I've got this trough up along the North Gulf Coast and the southeast coast. Again, very light precipitation with that. Light rain throughout the afternoon at Kodiak State Airport, and then some scattered snow showers taper off around Adak and Atka. And next front out here just south of the Shemya-Attu area, and so it should begin raining, or rain and snow, or snow changing to rain, that type of pattern here at any moment, with a little bit of an increase in the winds. For tonight, that front elongates eastward and bringing some rain and snow into the Adak-Atka area, but light amounts, and winds not too bad actually. With that gradient, isn't very impressive with in advance of the front there. Probably see some small craft advisories possibly. Weak trough here, scattered showers, rain or snow, eastern Aleutians, possibly back up to the Pribilofs. Weak low in the northern Bering Sea, and that could kick off a few light snow showers up there. Might catch the south side of St. Lawrence Island, but otherwise pretty nice day up there today. VFR, light winds extended even up into the Bering Strait areas and the Chukchi Sea. Still could see some fog there in the western Arctic coast. Point Ley earlier today had a quarter-mile visibility in fog, and then a few flurries there at Wainwright, or actually that was Wainwright that had the quarter-mile visibility in fog. Point Ley had the light snow flurries, and then winds really not too brisk at all here on the eastern Boulevard Sea coast. A little windier there just east of the border, anywhere from 40 to 50 miles an hour here over toward Mackenzie River Delta. And then into the eastern Brooks Range, there were some reports of some pretty brisk winds there through the passes. Otherwise, still another trough here hung up along the North Gulf Coast. So look for the same sort of weather you saw today here from southern Kenai Peninsula eastward into the northern Panhandle. Probably shutting off the showers over Prince of Wales Island down toward Dixon Entrance. Rain, light rain or showers, Kodiak Island, in the form of snow depending on your elevation. Rain or snow showers, light on the light side here for Bristol Bay, and no change here along over the Bering Sea. Mostly dry and possibly clear for the Brooks Range into the Arctic coast. And then tomorrow, less wind here over the interior valley areas, but not ending completely. Still a little breezy on the east side there with a little bit tighter gradient. Less wind here in the west where the lines are more spread apart. But this trough will keep a chance of snowing over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Chance of mixed precipitation, Bristol Bay. This whole trough trying to lift northward. That keeps a rather tight gradient here along the North Gulf Coast of the state, or over the North Gulf Coast of the Panhandle. And precipitation not too significant, not too widespread over the central, southern, southeast coast. Mostly a precipitation-free day there. Maybe some clearing. Very chance of showers up towards Hoona or Juneau, Haines area. But even that will be light. Chance of showers lingers for Kodiak Island. Ridging, though, clears it out over the Alaska Peninsula and lightens those winds up, especially from today, tomorrow there. Next front pushing rain and snow mixed into the eastern Aleutians. Probably looking at southeast winds anywhere from 20 to 30 miles an hour. Higher gusts in, say, Dutch Harbor. Could see gusts 40 maybe, and that's about it, with scattered showers behind that. Light snow still just near or south of St. Lawrence Island here, and dry to the north. Outlook for Saturday, first day of the weekend. A little bit more impressive system now on the chart here with 963 millibar low getting just on the north side of Unalaska Island by mid-afternoon, and the front bringing another round of warmer conditions with it on these east-southeast winds. So mostly in the form of rain or rain and snow mixed over the southwest interior. Look for gale force winds, rain possibly moderate at times there for the Kodiak Island area, and kind of damp again for the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound. Could see a few flurries or mixed light snow here. Be very light, but don't let that high center fool you into thinking the northern panhandle will be dry. Probably be some clouds at the least, but more sunshine on down the coastline there, and mostly clear up over the northern half of the state, including the Arctic coast. Lows tonight anywhere from 5 below to 10 above for the Arctic coast north slope, or 10 to 15 below for the upper Yukon Valley. Otherwise, either side of 0 for the 40-mile country, much of the central interior actually, with mid-20s for Bristol Bay, mid-30s for the peninsula, and the Panhandle, lows mid-20s to mid to upper 30s. Highs for tomorrow, mid-30s to lower 40s for the southeast coast, and mid to upper 30s here southern Alaska. Single numbers Tanana Valley, central interior, a little below 0 upper Yukon Valley, and maybe the eastern Arctic coast, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, near 40 for the Aleutians. Looking at the low temperatures for Saturday morning, 10 to 20 below upper Yukon Valley, the Yukon Flats into the Arctic Village area. And Bettle's looking at a low at -1 for Saturday morning. Otherwise, not too bad over the Panhandle, kind of mild, upper 20s to mid-30s. And kind of mild for southern Alaska as well. Once again, upper 20s, say in the Anchorage area, to lower 20s to Sitna Valley, upper 30s Kodiak Island, upper 30s for the Aleutians, and single numbers in the Arctic coast with highs staying below 0 over the upper Yukon Valley, and mid to upper 30s for south central Alaska, mid-40s again Kodiak Island, even into Bristol Bay here, lower 40s, including the Alaska Peninsula, and mid-30s, lower 40s for the Panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic here for Friday morning. We've got the front out here over the western Bering Sea later tonight, pushing eastward by mid-afternoon tomorrow. IFR across Adak and Atka, and another band of IFR here in northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait coast, and along the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta coast on into Bristol Bay. A pretty good area of VFR in between those two features. Enough moisture up here on the western and central Arctic coast to produce some IFR there. VFR, Brooks Range southward into until you get to the Tanana Valley, it looks like. Then you run some marginal VFR, and that increases here as you head south, and then you get into the IFR zone there from Kodiak Island, south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, Montague Island, eastward there to Yakutat, and areas of marginal VFR for the Panhandle. And in the afternoon, mostly marginal here for the southeast coast tomorrow. IFR stuck over Yakutat, otherwise marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Parts of the Copper River Basin and the Talkeetna is there, and then VFR, it looks like the Matanuska, Susitna Valley into Palmer, Anchorage, Wasilla, and then VFR, marginal VFR, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, IFR here across the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, Iliamna, and the southwest interior in a narrow band there with marginal conditions either to the southwest or northeast. Good VFR here over the eastern interior, North Slope Arctic coast. IFR still lingering on the central and western Arctic coast. And some good IFR here with that next storm out over the southern Bering Sea, and that advancing eastward to definitely Nikolsky, possibly on Alaska late in the afternoon. And then for Saturday, from Adak all the way into the, say, Nelson Lagoon area, IFR up to the Pribilofs, northern Bering Sea, looks like some VFR, and along the southwest coast of Novak Island, marginal St. Lawrence Island, up across the Seward Peninsula, Selawik Valley there, and the northwest coast. VFR, North Slope, much of the Arctic coast, and some IFR here. Southern Kuskokwim Valley, eastward across Iliamna Lake, cutting across southern Cook Inlet in toward Seldovia, Homer, Kachemak Bay, and up into Prince William Sound there with marginal VFR, Matanuska, Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, western Copper River Basin, Tanana Valley VFR, southeast coast, marginal VFR. And for the afternoon, Saturday, good VFR here for the southeast coast, marginal VFR southern Alaska, still some lingering IFR there for Prince William Sound, IFR Kodiak Island, and along the southwest coast here, Pribilofs on down to the eastern Aleutians and much of the southeast Bering Sea, but some VFR there for Bristol Bay. Central northern interior looking pretty good. VFR passes Anatuvik and Adigan, both VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal, rainy marginal, and windy VFR. And as well as Isabel and Montasta, both looking VFR tomorrow. And Tanita VFR mostly, could be some times tomorrow of marginal conditions. Portage, marginal VFR, possible IFR eastern entrance, especially early on. And Chilkoot and White, occasionally marginal. Freezing levels. So that warm air aloft here, the upper level ridge there right along and off the Arctic coast, 6,000 feet. And then 2,000 feet here across southern Alaska, at the surface hugging the North Gulf Coast, and still a fair ways north out there in the Bering Sea, 2,000 to 4,000 feet here, that sliding north ahead of that next front. Icing kind of a narrow band here, a band meandering across southern Alaska of possible considerable moderate, very isolated if there is, probably just be light and that's about it. None to the north, another patch here over the eastern Aleutians, and that tapers off over the Panhandle. Jet stream trough out here over the Bering Sea and a weak low there near Kodiak, and so we got really 40, 60 knot winds out of the south-southwest over the western interior. 9,000 foot winds like this, about 20 to 25 south to north flow here over the western part of the state, and then some 35 knot winds around this low just south of Kenai Peninsula, about the same thing at 3,000 feet here, and then increasing northeast winds out over the western Aleutians. Otherwise, not too bad here across the central Aleutians, 15 to 20, picking up 20 to 30 knots there. Eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, 10 to 20 there for the southwest coast, and maybe an area of 20 knot winds over the Tanana Valley, but otherwise not too bad, 25 along the coast. And turbulence-wise, moderate chop here from the northern Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, in across the Kenai Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Meteor showers are like nature's fireworks, and this week is the Geminids, one of the strongest of the year. Meteor showers are usually caused by Earth passing through the tail of a comet, but unusually, the Geminids are caused by a rock comet. That's an asteroid that behaves like a comet. To find Gemini, draw an imaginary arrow through the Big Dipper from Megrez diagonally through Meroc, and it'll point to Castor and Pollux, the heads of the Gemini twins. The moon will be nearly full this year, so it's not the best year for one of the best showers, but even though they radiate from Gemini, meteors can appear in any part of the sky. So if it's clear, get out there and take a peek. The best time to watch will be around 2 a.m. December 13th and 14th, with streaks of burning matter peaking around 50 per hour or one every minute in the darkest skies. So grab a blanket, find a comfy spot, and keep looking up.
The beluga whale, also known as the white whale, lives in large groups and are unusual among whales. They have no dorsal fin, large bulbous heads, and they can actually swim backwards. To feed, they produce sound to find and hunt fish and invertebrates, and they use sound to communicate.
They're also known as the canaries of the sea because they make such a diversity of noises. They make chirps and whistles and gurgles and trumpeting sounds. They just make all kinds of sounds.
In the U.S., beluga whales live in the cold waters of Alaska, and there are 5 separate populations. Of those 5, the Cook Inlet population is the smallest, and it's declined by about 75%. Subsistence hunting may have contributed to this initial population drop, but this practice was regulated starting in 1999, with the last hunt in 2005. Still, the beluga population here has yet to recover.
We listed Cook Inlet beluga whales as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act in 2008, and we had hoped that the population would start recovering, but we are still seeing a continued decline. And these beluga whales are only found in Cook Inlet, and so if they go extinct, we don't think any other belugas will come back and populate this area.
These whales spend most of their summer near Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, where threats to belugas are on the rise as the city grows. These may include diminishing food, habitat loss or destruction, pollution, toxins, and human-caused noise which hampers their ability to feed and communicate. Researchers are trying to understand which of these threats may be impacting them most, but Cook Inlet is a tough place to work.
It's really hostile for research. We have the strong tides, which makes it challenging for human safety, and we can't see through the water. It is very muddy, so we're pretty much limited to the part of the animal that breaks the surface of the water. And as a result, we have limited information about the specific population dynamics of Cook Inlet beluga whales.
Up until recently, information has mainly come from annual aerial surveys from aircraft, and boat or shore-based photo identification surveys that use unique markings to tell animals apart. Scientists also use passive acoustics to listen for belugas, but none of these methods can detect much information about their health.
So it's really been a game changer with the whole species in the spotlight designation. We've gotten more resources within our agency.
For instance, we're able to use a drone to collect some aerial imagery of belugas in the wild, and we're hoping to learn some information about the age classes, information about the health status.
And probably the most important bit of information that we'll get out of that is we'll be able to identify the new calves. And we're hoping if we keep doing this every year, we'll be able to get an estimate of calf production every year that will tell us something about how well the population's doing.
We are also expanding upon our biopsy studies, hopefully to give us some information about sex, the individual's reproductive status, some genetic information, some contaminant loads.
Public and private partners are contributing as well. Some are looking at toxin levels in the whale's prey, while others are analyzing beluga teeth to learn about their age and past diet. Others monitor water quality and how belugas react to boats, and more check to see if their behavior changes with increased background noise. All of these findings will go toward developing effective recovery strategies for this population.
As for what you can do, if you're out boating, give belugas space. Don't drive right up next to them. Stay about 100 yards away. If you're flying over them, just remember that you're putting noise into the water as well, and so stay at least 1,500 feet above them. Report a stranded beluga whale as soon as possible, and that's if they're dead stranded or live stranded. The amount of information that we can learn from these animals by responding to a stranding is monumental, and it will help our efforts to recover them.
Together we can help beluga whales thrive in the dynamic waters of Cook Inlet. With continued research and good stewardship, we hope to see this population grow in the years to come.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. A little more filled in up here over the Chukchi Sea. Still kind of a really open area there, but smaller than it was yesterday, and kind of looked like something of an increase here from what we had yesterday on the west side. Not so much, maybe a little bit here into the Chukchi Sea with not much change south of the Bering Strait. And coastal water forecasts for the south coast, southerlies 15 to 20 knots here with seas around 20 feet. 20-foot seas for the entire coastline area here with winds south to southeast at 25 knots for the north coast. Gale force southeasterly gusts for Lynn Canal and southeast sustained 20 knots there for Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait southeast 15 with 8-foot seas. Outlook for Saturday. Even lighter winds here on the south coast, south to southeast 10 to 15, seas down to 11 feet now, 15 knot southeasterly winds on the north coast, and then up to 25 knots there south of Yakutat, north 15 for Lynn Canal, and southeast 25 for small craft advisories in Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southeast at 20. And let's hit the wrong button there. Let's progress over to Prince William Sound. East winds tomorrow, pretty brisk at 30 knots out of the east, seas 7 feet. Full gales here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Easterlies 40 knots, seas 17 feet, and east 30 knots with 14-foot seas for the western North Gulf Coast. Barren Islands, small craft advisories with 12-foot seas as those winds will be out of the northeast at 25 knots, northeast 30 Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, small craft advisories north of the Forelands from the north at 25 knots, and south side there, north at 30 with 11-foot seas. Lighter winds in store for Saturday, especially northern Cook Inlet down to 15 knots out of the northeast. Still out looking at small craft advisory southern Cook Inlet at 25 knots. Good gales though, Kamishak Bay east-southeast at 40, southeast 35 for the Barren Islands, and the North Gulf Coast southeast winds 20 to 30 knots with seas running 12 feet. Prince William Sound bring it down to 15 with 4-foot seas. And for Kodiak Island on the east side here, northwest, 30 knots, some higher gusts out of the bays, and then Shelikof Strait, lighter winds than today. We'll go north at 25, sustained with 8-foot seas, and 25-knot winds for the Alaska Peninsula on the Bering Sea side, north side, southeast direction for the 25-knot winds, and then south side, west at 25, seas 9 feet, Bristol Bay, northwest at 20 with 6-foot seas. And then for Saturday, Kodiak Island, gale warnings, southeast or east-southeast, 35 to 40 knots. Seas heading toward 20 feet, but not quite making it. And from AKwx to Castle Cape, southeast 45 knots. Gales through the Alaska Peninsula, south-southeast, 35 to 40 knots. Bristol Bay, almost storm warnings, not quite though. East 45 knots, seas at 10 feet. Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, or generally both islands there, southeast 30 to mostly 35 knots, seas 8 to 11 feet. Adak and Atka, northeast at 25 for small craft advisories there, and northwest 25 knots, turn north at 25 from Kiska to Shemya. Outlook for Saturday, northwest 25 from Shemya and Attu over toward Kiska, then gale warnings here from Kiska to Amchitka with Adak and Atka and Adak even stronger with northwest 45 knots sustained, seas in the lower 20s, and storm warnings now for the Fox Islands. Unalaska Island, south to southeast at 50 knots, west-northwest 45 to 50 knots for Umbak Island. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, west winds 20 knots. Pribilof, southeast at 20. St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, east at 15. Outlook for Saturday, southeast 20 for St. Lawrence Island, and 30 to 40 knot easterly winds along the southwest coast. And for the Pribilof, sustained 40 knot gale force winds with 16-foot seas. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast, demarcation point, or over toward demarcation point, the east side there, brisk wind advisories, east 25 knots, otherwise east 10 to 15, west side northeast 15 all the way down to Cape Thompson, and then Cape Thompson to Wales east at 15. I'll look for Saturday, southeast 20 from Wales up to Cape Beaufort, and then easterlies 10 to 15 for the remainder of the coastline. Tonight, maybe some flurries here and continued wind advisories for areas from still could see gusts 40 miles an hour, Delta Junction, Indian Mountain, Koyukuk, Kobuk Valley. Otherwise, lighter winds as you head south here. Chance of light moisture continues from the North Gulf Coast, and front brings some rain or snow into the eastern Aleutians. This low persists in the Gulf with moisture, and then a better storm comes in on Saturday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.